Hi, this is Sean Hafer, and in this video, we will be getting into the first part of creating a clock out of primitives. This is an update for Cinema4D 2026 and newer. My older one was a version from a few years ago, so I'm going ahead and creating an update. I'll have the files able to download if you want to follow along, and let's get it started. So first off, I'm going to start off and create my clock body. And so for that, I'm just going to go here to my primitives and come down to my tube object. So once I create the tube, we'll see that sitting here. And we're going to make this to scale. So this clock is going to be maybe around 5 inches in diameter. It's a little bedside table clock or something like that. So I'm going to come here to my outer radius and bring that down to 2.5 inches, so 2.5. I'm going to make my inner radius 2.2, and I'm going to make my height 2 inches. And I'm just tabbing through those to get to that. My height 2 inches. And then if I want to zoom into this, I can either, of course, use my scroll wheel, or I can come up here and use my zoom. I can also just select it and hit O, and that'll zoom that into kind of the center there. I'm going to go ahead now too also and add some rotation segments, and that's to smooth out the shape of our tube. Right now it's very faceted. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make that, let's try 96. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we can always change that later if we need to, since we're leaving this parametric. I had changed the cap segments to 2. We only need 1 there. And we really don't need any of these segments in the height either. So I can go down to my height segments and make that 1. And we're just saving polygons that we don't need. Now for the orientation down here, I'm going to change that to -Z. Now I could have just rotated the tube up, but then its local axis would have not been aligned with the world axis, and I just find it easier to work that way. So that's why I changed the orientation to -Z. Then we're going to turn on the fillet here to give a little bit of rounding to our edges here. And so on my fillet, I'm going to bring that way down to 0.05. And now you can see we get a little bit of a fillet there to catch the light. All right, so I've got this. I'm now going to change that and call that my clock body. And I'm going to go ahead and save my file. File, save as. I'll save it to my desktop. And we're just going to call that primitive clock. Okay. So now if we go along, our next step is we want to create the face for the clock. I'm going to use a disk for this. I'm going to come over to my primitives, grab a disk, and I'm going to scale that down to outer radius of 2.3 inches. And then we're also going to put that on the -Z. And you can see that's cutting in a little bit to our clock face, because that was 2.2 inches. So if we don't need to necessarily increase the rotation segments on this, it should be fine. Now I'm going to move it up a little bit by just going to make sure I'm on my move tool, grab my Z-axis and kind of push it forward. And we're going to put that right about -0.7. So in older versions of Cinema4D, we had our coordinates manager always open down here. If you don't see that, just click on this icon right here. That'll open your coordinates manager. And now we can see that's at what, -0.6. So we'll make it -0.7. Okay. Next up, we've got our disk. We'll call that clock face. And I'm going to create a material for that clock face. I've got a PNG of a clock face that I'm going to use right here. So we'll use basically clock face 26.png. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to go ahead and open up my material editor. And I can come in here and I'm just going to double click. And so that'll give us a default material here. And I'm going to call that, double click the name, clock face. All right, now to see our options here, down here you cannot necessarily add a image into your base layer. So what I'm going to do is double click it to go to the node manager. And when that opens up, I'm going to bring in my clock face. So open up the folder with those assets in it, and we'll just drag clock face 26 over into our node editor. Now here it's saying it's not in the project search path. Do you want to create a copy? I'm going to say no on this. And now it'll create a texture node for us and it'll load that image into it. What we need to do now is take the out color and connect it to the input color on our OpenPBR material. So I'm just going to come in here, drag that over to that, and now that connects those two. So I can go ahead and close this now, and I can just drag this down onto my clock face. And now we can see we've got our clock face applied. Now all your other materials will still apply on this. So if I click on this here, we could come down. If we wanted to make it less shiny, we could bring our specular down. I'm going to go down to maybe 0.15. And you can change our roughness and all of that, those options as well. All right, so we've got our clock face here. I'm now going to go to create the glass for our clock. So for that, I'm going to use a cylinder because I want the glass to have a little bit of thickness. I'll come over here to my primitives, grab a cylinder, and that cylinder, we're going to call that glass or plastic, whatever you want to. And then we'll come down here and make our radius down to 2.3. And then we're going to make our height really thin. So let's make our height about 0.02 inches. And height segments could go down to 1. And we're going to make our rotation segments up to about 96. And that's going to nestle right in here inside our inner radius of our tube to give a little bit of a allowance for some shadow and light and things in there. And then we just want to go again to -z to line up our axes. And we're going to pull that out. And we'll make that -0.9. the Z just to clean that up. Okay, so we've got our glass here. Let's go ahead and create another material for the glass. And I'm just going to double click that name. Name it glass. We can come in here and just look at our options. So my base, I'm going to leave that fine. Specular, I'm going to get rid of that roughness just so we have a really clean surface. And then down here on transmission, I'm going to roll that down and bring that weight up to 1. Now if we put that on our glass, dragging up here to the object manager, we can see through it. We give it a quick render and we can see we've got our see-through glass now. Okay, now we're going to create our center post, and that's where our hands are going to be attached to, and they'll rotate around that. So for that, we'll use another cylinder. This is going to be a little guy, so get a cylinder here. We can make it -z. Go to our radius on this one, and we'll make that 0.1. And we'll come down to the height, and we'll make that height 0.2. And then height segments, again, that can just be 1. Rotation segments, 16 might be fine because it's so close. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it out until we can kind of see it poking through a little bit. If we look down here at our Z-axis, we don't want it to hit the glass. So we can put that position right at about -0.75. Okay, let's give that a quick render as well, and we can see we've got that little nub. Now, if I zoom in here, we're not seeing much on this with we don't have a fillet on here, and we don't have a fillet on cylinder primitive objects in the main area like we do on cubes or we did on the tube. So we have to go over to the caps section here, select on the caps, and then click the fillet. And we'll do 3 segments, and I'm going to move that down to about maybe a 0.02. There we go. Now we've got just a nice little fillet there. And I might bring those rotation segments. I'll go back to my object tab and maybe bring that up to 32. Just again to smooth that surface out. Okay, now I can kind of zoom out here. We should have a little bit of a fillet now that will catch the light. There we go. On our little post, and I'm just going to call that post. For the next step, we're going to create a little handle out of 3 primitives. We're going to use a cone, a sphere, and a torus. I'm going to build this in another file just to make it a little easier to see, and then we'll copy it from there and we'll paste it into our main clock. I'm going to just click up here and hit plus. You can hit Control or Command N for a new file as well. And I'm going to come in and start with a cone. I come down here, find my cone, there it is. And for this cone, we're going to make the top radius 0.09. We're going to make the bottom radius 0.2. And we're going to make the height 0.8. So again, I'll just select it, hit O to zoom in so I can see it, or just scroll in with my mouse wheel. And now I can look at this and see it, and I'm going to make its rotation. We'll make that 32 as well. I don't need those height segments, so I'll take that down to 1. And that orientation, we're just going to leave at plus Y because this is going to be on the top of our clock. And we're going to have our sphere kind of push down onto this so we don't need to add any rounding or fillets to this. So I think that'll just be fine. Next up, let's do a sphere. Again, in my primitives, click a sphere. And on the sphere radius, let's bring that down to 0.18 inches. And 32 will probably be fine for this. So I can just now move this up, find where I want that. And on the position, maybe we'll put that at 0.5 on the Y, just to round it up. And now we just need our little ring at the top, so we'll use a torus for that. I'll come once more into primitives, grab my torus. We're going to put that on the negative Z. For the torus, let's make the ring radius 0.4. We're going to make our ring segments 48. We're going to make our pipe radius 0.04, so it's nice and thin. And then we're going to make the pipe segments 32. All right, so now let's go ahead and we can sort of move that up into place. Now everything we've done, we've sort of just created it right at the center, of our little 3D world here, the origin at 0, 0, 0. Everything you can just sort of move up and down to keep everything centered up since everything's sort of symmetrical. So once I get that into place, I can come up and maybe we'll make that 0.9 just to clean it up, make it nice and even. Okay, now I've got all 3 of these. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these together, and you can do that a couple different ways. So I'm going to just shift select up here. And then I can either right click and go down to group objects. I can also go to object, group objects. You can hit Option or Alt G to group those objects. And all it does is it creates a null object, which is right here, creates a null, and then it makes all 3 of these children automatically of that group. Now we can just double click the name for the group and call it handle. And now if I want to transfer that over to my clock, I can just copy, Command C, Command V to paste. And now we can just sort of pull that up on the Y until we see it. And we'll put that height position at 3.25. So it's just sticking a little bit in there and it looks fine. All right. So that's going to wrap up part 1. And this is kind of just getting our basic body of our clock done. In part 2, we'll get into creating the hands and using alpha channels to create transparency on our hand textures and just use simple planes to create the hands for the clock. So I'll see you in part 2. Thanks for watching.